Right. Very good morning.
Good morning, Doctor.
Yeah. Always wonder how you all are doing. Do you have other classes today?
No, only your class.
Only this class. Okay. That's good to hear that. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think there are 74, so it should be. Okay, so 2% needs manual attendance. I can see 74 people here, so 76, so there are 3 more persons. I don't know whether they'll be able to join us today. Okay, let's proceed. Today we're gonna touch. Anyone else going on the attendance?
Good morning, Doctor. I'm Ricky.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry to ask that for our last week attendance, yeah, we haven't get our attendance for the last week.
What do you mean? You all send your manual attendance, didn't it?
Yeah, because last week Doctor said that we just type our attendance on the chat and Doctor will help us to do the manual.
Yeah, it's done. What's your problem?
But we haven't get our attendance for the last week.
It's already done, Ricky.
Oh yeah, oh, okay, sorry.
Okay. Encik Haikal, can you unshare the attendance? I can proceed. I want to proceed with the class. Right. Is this this virtual background is a bit anyway. Let's just proceed with this. All right. A very good morning. Thank you, Ricky, for being such a responsible class monitor for your class. You've been superb, and thank you. And so I mean, the fact that you raised up your attendance last week is raised it up this morning shows that how much you care for your classmates. But anyway, it's good to be in touch with you all. We are still trying to, just to let you know, we are also, as your lecturers, we are also struggling with this idea about doing all this online teaching. It can be quite tiring sometimes, and it's very difficult to deliver effective lectures because normally when we give lectures, we look at your facial expression. Those things are very, very meaningful when you want to deliver knowledge, whether you're able to follow or understand. So without being able to see how you respond on your facial expression and stuff like that, so it's a bit I just have to take for granted that you all can follow our lectures. So should you have any question, you can raise it up with Ricky, so he can bring it up with me, and we can address it when we meet virtually like this once a week. Right. All right. Okay. This week, what we're going to do is I'm going to do 2 things. One is we're going to look at underdevelopment theories, the emergence of underdevelopment theories, which is basically a critique towards what they call it, classical Marxism. We have looked at the idea of Karl Marx the week before, and his notion of how development should take place, and his idea that development, the end product of development is basically socialism, right? So Today we're going to be looking at neo-Marxism and the emergence of what we call underdevelopment theories, because underdevelopment theories try to explain, yes, we have seen how modernization theory have explained progress and development in Western countries, in the West, basically the role of technology in science, industrialization, urbanization. Now, the issue is why progress, why urbanization, industrialization seem to lead to progress in Western countries. But if you implement the same process or the same process or the same economic principles in outside of Europe, rather than bringing development or progress as expected, and in fact it creates a situation where poverty or what they call regress development or underdevelopment emerge. Yeah? The underdevelopment, underdevelopment means dalam bahasa Malaysia merujuk kepada pembangunan yang mundur. Ini agak berbeza dengan apa yang dipanggil sebagai kurangnya pembangunan, ya, ataupun tidak ada pembangunan. Tidak ada pembangunan dan pembangunan yang mundur itu adalah kedua keadaan yang agak berbeza. So tidak ada pembangunan means memang tidak ada pembangunan. There is no industrialization, there is no urbanization, and so on and so forth. Pembangunan yang mundur ataupun underdevelopment is basically walaupun ada ya pembangunan tetapi ia membawa kepada kemunduran. Yeah, so underdevelopment theory is trying to explain that. Ya, apakah yang menyebabkan keadaan itu? Ya, dalam modernization theory mengatakan keadaan kemiskinan walaupun ada pembangunan muncul oleh kerana keadaan budaya, oleh kerana ada budaya yang tidak sesuai untuk menerima prinsip-prinsip yang disarankan oleh modernization theory. So, tapi underdevelopment theory will come up with a completely different notion, reasons, explanation as to why this is happening. So today we're going to be looking at that. There are two things. What is this? There are two things we're going to be looking. We'll be looking at a PowerPoint presentation, and after that, we're going to be doing a reading together. Yeah? Can you? Oh, sorry. Can you see?
No, Doctor.
Are you able to see my screen?
I see the screen, but I cannot see this.
We saw the screen.
Are you able to see the screen? The PowerPoint presentation.
No, Doctor.
Dapatkah?
No, Doctor.
You can't see it?
Cannot.
Huh?
We have listed form this.
Yeah. Okay, this is basically the title. Can you see now?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
Doctor.
Yeah. Neo-Marxism. Neo means new dalam in French. Neo-Marxism, structuralism, and underdevelopment theories. So these are the three main points we'll be looking at: key critiques of modernization theory and classical Marxism. Remember, we started with modernization theory, then classical Marxism, and then so the critique towards these two theories telah membawa kepada neo-Marxism ideas. And then out of that, there are two theories that emerge. One is structuralism and underdevelopment theories. Under underdevelopment theories, ada what they call it, dependency theory dan world systems theory. So those are the things that we'll be looking at in this class. So we have only about 3 more minutes to go, but we will okay. Now we have seen under development theory dengan Marxism theory, development itu merujuk kepada economic growth, ya, perkembangan ekonomi, dan ada cara untuk mencapai pembangunan adalah melalui industrialisasi through investment of capital. Remember, Keynes said investment adalah is the real investment, merupakan the real deal ataupun faktor penting yang membawa kepada pembangunan. So investment di sini merujuk kepada if the government pour money into big projects, mega projects like liners, pembinaan jalan raya, pembinaan jambatan, semua itu adalah what they call as investment of capital, right? So industrialization through investment of capital, yeah. But the main critique towards these two theories is basically they ignore history, yeah. Dan pandangan yang menekan kepada setiap manusia itu boleh ataupun mempunyai keupayaan untuk menjadi bersifat objektif. That we need to be objective, meaning our mind, we need to use our mind to weigh things, to look at cost and benefit, or to assess things. So the power of the mind, I think I remember I explained this to you in second year. The idea that the notion by Weber yang membawa kepada yang membezakan manusia dengan alam haiwan adalah manusia boleh mempunyai keupayaan untuk berfikir. Ya, dengan fikiran yang waras dia boleh membuat pertimbangan kepada perasaannya dan langkah ataupun what he should be doing. So that is basically the development belief in modernization suggests that development human has the ability to be objective. Yeah, so the other critique is written mainly by men in the West. Yeah, so you know, Karl Marx is a man, Adam Smith is a man. So mainly men writers based in the West, right? In 1960s, there's new uncertainty about modernization. Ada rasa keraguan tentang modernization, project of modernization. Ini adalah kesan daripada peperangan yang in Vietnam. 1960s. Now you see a witness. Sekarang ini you see what's happening in the US. The current election situation. This is not just about this is not just about a competition between President Trump dengan Mr. Biden. What's happening there is basically about two different ideologies going on, two different vision about how the country should move forward. Should they move forward with the idea of capitalism, with modernization, or should they experiment with their notion of socialism? Seperti apa yang kita lihat the last 2 weeks, the notion of classless society, yeah, tapi but a society that is led by the elite, yeah. So that is why what's happening in the US is basically a form of conflict between these two notions, pandangan tentang bagaimanakah masyarakat Amerika would like to move forward. Yeah, so this is in a sense of if you follow the debate going on and read beyond what CNN or Al Jazeera, all the main media is telling you, there's a lot more going on. If you go on social media, follow the debate on Twitter, to follow the debate on Facebook, they give you a different picture about what's really going on. Yeah, so. Remember when Karl Marx talk about the what do you call it, his notion of 5 stages, 6 stages of development. The last, for them to attain socialism, yeah, you need to go to capitalism, and then you overthrow. You have a you have a revolution. First stage of revolution, second stage of revolution. Then you reach what he calls a stateless society, classless society. Yeah, but we have seen from the different models of development that we have seen last week, the Russian models, the model in China, different models in Africa, and also now you look at what's happening in Venezuela and Cuba and all that. So these are the things that's going on there. So I hope you are not looking at it in terms of one person A against another person B. Yeah, these are basically a debate about where is America going on. Are they going to stay put with modernization theory? Are they going to stay put with the idea of capitalism? Capitalism, as you remember, rooted in the idea of Adam Smith that says that every human being is born with certain interest. Yeah, everybody is trying everybody has self-interest. Everyone has ability and capacities. So the idea is that the argument is in what would be the best economic platform to allow those things to, which one would be conducive for those personal interests to come out, or and so on and so forth. So that is basically what's going on. So in 1960s, the same questions were raised, the same concerns were raised. Is the answer, can capitalism move the society forward and so on. So ini telah membawa kepada what we call the left critiques in UK. Seperti the EP Thompson argued that the gap between the rich and poor had widened by a factor of 3 between 1945 and 1965. So it's a similar situation today. So some people say yang kaya semakin kaya, yang miskin semakin miskin. It's the same ongoing debate today in America, right? So ini telah membawa kepada a new type of theory became popular among younger sociologists, one that reversed all the old axioms. Yeah. So jika dulu kapitalisme dilihat sebagai cause of social progress, tetapi dia diputar ya di bawah teori ini bahwa kapitalisme itu sebenarnya adalah a source of exploitation and the main agent of poverty in most of the world. So they look at imperialism and not backwardness, and lack of modernity became the new enemy. Jika in modernization theory, remember Truman's speech, he said the enemy of mankind is basically poverty and backwardness. Therefore, it is our responsibility to share know-how, to share our technological knowledge, our scientific knowledge, so that societies around the world will be able to overcome poverty with science and technology. But now with this new sociologies, basically they are based in Latin America, they say, no, that is not the main problem. The main problem is imperialism. That is what they call the cultural hegemony of the West over the world, right? So ini membawa kepada what we call voices from the periphery in 1970s, ya, suara daripada masyarakat, ya, at the margin, ya, di kawasan pinggiran. So 1970s. Okay. So these voices drawing on Marxism, ya, they're drawing on Marxism. They begin to critique classical Marxism as too focused on experiences of Western societies and assumption all societies will follow the same path. Remember, Rousseau and Marx both look at the same. They have these linear stages of progress from one stage to another, and then they assume, especially Rousseau, assume that yes, semua masyarakat di dunia, semua negara di dunia jika ingin mengecapi ataupun mencapai pembangunan, it needs to go through those stages. So ini dipanggilkan sebagai too focus dengan masyarakat di barat. Yeah. So and they see this as so in their critiques they say the West look at themselves as the center of economic growth, and places outside Europe is basically kawasan pinggiran. Yeah. So, but now they're trying to turn it around and say, look, we have been focusing too much on what's happening in Europe. How about what's happening outside Europe? Yeah, so ini telah membawa kepada they say, how do we get out of that then? They say we need to do revolution. Karl Marx, the difference between this revolution is proposed by this new group of sociologists is, Karl Marx talked about the two stages of revolution. One is the formation of a class, yeah, formation of class, and then the class will then, the new class then will overcome ataupun mengambil alih, yeah, mengambil alih all the industry, all the factory, and so on and so forth. And then the next stage is basically what they call leading towards dictatorship. Yeah. So orthodox. But for them, under the new idea the new idea by these new sociologists, they say we can carry out socialist revolution now. Now, if you look at what's going on in America today, you see what they call the squad group. So they are really pushing for this, including the Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and so on and so forth. So this huge group, these groups are basically trying to get socialist revolution now. But you can see how it is backfiring towards the Democrat Party. Yeah. Now the other one is urban versus rural nature of revolution. Yeah. Karl Marx said only urban areas will experience a revolution, but neo-Marxism basically saying no, it can be a rural nature of revolution as well. So it doesn't have to be just in urban area. Now, out of this argument, critique towards Marxism, emerge neo-Marxism theories. And one of the first theories that emerge out of this is the dependency theory. Yeah? Teori kebergantungan yang melihat kepada sistem negara, sistem the global system, and dia mengatakan bahwa kenapa negara-negara di luar Eropah tidak membangun adalah kena perhubungan kebergantungan. Negara kurang membangun itu kepada negara barat, dan juga negara-negara barat bergantung juga kepada negara-negara di luar Eropah. Yeah? So Marxist scholars like Raoul Prebisch and Furtado argue that Latin American countries were poor because of their relationship to richer countries in 1960s and 1970s. So their argument is, kenapa poverty wujud? It's not necessarily a cultural issue, but it is about a particular kind of relationship. Ada satu jenis perhubungan yang bersifat eksploitatif yang wujud. Yeah? So ini the Caribbean School of Scholars sought to identify indigenous paths for the region's development. Yeah? Dengan itu mereka coba mencari jalan yang bersifat lokal untuk adakah jalan ataupun cara yang bersifat lokal supaya negara di Latin America itu boleh membangun. Yeah? So model of development proposed by Rostow and Lewis, challenged from within economics by Paul Baran, and his book, The Political Economy of Growth. Yeah? So so Paul Baran is a very influential person that critiques the idea of Rostow and remember Lewis, and these are basically modernization theories. Yeah. So Baran says economic development of poor countries is against the interests of rich countries. So he suggests that negara-negara yang kaya itu tidak ingin negara-negara miskin itu menjadi maju. Yeah, but which is quite different from, remember what Truman said. Truman said, whatever happens around the world, if there are kemiskinan di negara-negara di luar Amerika, ini juga akan memberi kesan kepada kita. Oleh itu, it is important for us to share what we have, the knowledge that we have, the resources that we have, that these countries who are languished in poverty will also experience what we have. So his notion of economic development is not just about economic development per se, about money. He's saying social development is important for peace and security in the world. Remember, it was the end of 1945. So it's quite, the critique here is by Paul Baran is, yes, it's understandable, but I think they need to revisit the speech by President Truman when he talked about why the four-point program that he proposed. Now, the Paul Baran said the rich countries are rich because they have exploited the poor. Yeah? I mean, there are truth to that. Yeah? So this is what we call, instead of a cultural issue, he said it is the structural, that's why we call it structuralist economics. Yeah? Dia merujuk kepada yang menyebabkan perbezaan di antara negara miskin dengan negara kaya adalah struktur ekonomi itu sendiri. And he's talking about the free trade yang disarankan oleh member Adam Smith. Free trade by modernization theories will not improve low levels of economic growth and standard of living. That is what Raoul Prebisch said. And so why? Ya, kenapa dia menyarankan keadaan begitu? This is because there is a different global economic structure from which existed when the European countries experienced the process of industrialization. Yeah, so dia mengatakan the reason why it is because the free market is an obstacle for Latin American development. So free market itu menjadi satu struktur ekonomi di mana ia menyebabkan negara yang mempunyai kekayaan itu menyerapkan apa yang ada di kawasan-kawasan pinggir. So so dia membawa kepada pembangunan yang berbeza di antara negara yang mempunyai kekayaan dengan like the technology, the science, and so on and so forth. So he said it is the global economic structure. So if you want to change things, if the Latin American country wants to move forward, they need to delink themselves from Europe. Yeah, they need to delink themselves from negara-negara Barat. Yeah, so Paul Baran's idea and Raoul Prebisch idea telah digunapakai oleh Gunda Frank, seorang ekonomis, that argue that rich colonial metropolitan powers acquire wealth through exploiting weaker satellite countries. Yeah, so they say negara-negara di Eropah telah mengalami industrialization. Remember, we look at the first industrialization. I hope you have seen the video by Hugh that talks about the first industrialization in Europe bermula dengan agrarian revolusi pertanian, dan ini telah membawa kepada surplus in pengeluaran pertanian, dan surplus itu telah membolehkan makanan yang lebih banyak itu di what they call transported throughout Europe. Dan ini telah membawa kepada perdagangan, sistem perdagangan, and so on and so forth. Now for Gunda Frank, he said, with the same method that they use locally, they also use it at the global level. Yeah, so they exploit the weaker satellite countries, negara-negara pinggiran, yeah, and yeah. So he look at kenapa dia mempunyai pendapat demikian. He said, if you look at the world history, that this is happening. You need to take history into consideration, right? So the satellite countries mean negara-negara pinggiran, satellite, supply cheap primary commodities to rich countries. The rich countries use raw materials to produce relatively expensive manufactured goods, which are sold back to the peripheral countries. Yeah, so bagi Frank, this is a form of theft. Yeah? So he's saying that, for instance, pada satu ketika dulu Malaysia kita tidak mempunyai factory untuk mengeluar kasut. Yeah, although we have susu getah, we will begin to plant getah. In Europe, you can't plant getah because you need very what do you call it, hot weather. Yeah, so we plant getah, produce susu getah. From susu getah, you make them into keping getah, and then you bring them to Europe. In Europe, they are put into factory from into factory, and then they're produced into Dunlopilo lah, kasut lah, tayar kereta lah, and these are what they call the finished products, manufactured goods, which are then sent back to us, and we buy them at a higher price because it is all manufactured over there. So so for Frank, ini adalah satu jenis pencurian that the rich countries get the raw material and then sell it back as an expensive manufactured goods. Yeah. So for Gunda Frank, ini adalah satu theft, and then continuing through the policies of World Bank and IMF and through the activities of multinational corporations. So he accused MNCs of introducing inappropriate new consumption patterns and outcompeting local firms. So they said, okay, they learned these new MNCs introduce new food system, KFC lah, McDonald's lah, new drinks like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Orange M&M, all these drinks and food, and also new cara pakaian, cara belajar, menulis, membaca. So for them, for these guys, they said it's a form of control. And then they replace what we have locally. So sekarang, I wonder, you can say that, okay, KFC replace nasi ayam, or Coca-Cola replace coconut, yeah, coconut water. Yeah. So he said this is an appropriate new consumption pattern that has been introduced by the West. Right. So for him, because of that, he said, apa yang menyebabkan kemiskinan adalah is not misfortune. He said it is a result of it's a result of this nature of relationship between the rich and the poor, ataupun between negara-negara, what he calls the negara-negara yang berada di pusat dengan negara-negara di kawasan pinggir. So Frank in 1969, he said, poorer countries experience their greatest economic development if and when their ties to the metropolis are weakest. Yeah? So kalau negara-negara miskin ingin mendapatkan pembangunan ekonomi, then they need to cut the relationship with negara-negara yang kaya. Whether that is possible, and that is a pointer, that itu adalah sesuatu yang boleh diargukan. So poorer countries face a choice between poverty or socialist revolution. So how do you deceive a relationship with the negara-negara kaya, negara-negara di center? It is through socialist revolution bagi dia. So these underdevelopment theories, they propose socialism as the end product of development, right? Yeah, so key argument is underdevelopment is a result of the capitalist system. Yeah, capitalist system yang disarankan oleh Adam Smith. The term Latin America's experience is development of underdevelopment. Jika di negara-negara bukan Europe, dia adalah development of progress. Ya, development yang membawa kepada pembangunan, ya, bawa kepada kemajuan. Tetapi di luar Eropah, ia adalah pembangunan yang membawa kepada pembangunan yang mundur. Yeah, so for him, he said capitalism created both industrialization and underdevelopment. Yeah. So in Europe, Kapitalisme membawa kepada industrialization, di luar Eropah yang membawa kepada pembangunan yang mundur. So dia adalah berbeza daripada modernization theory. Non-industrialized countries are not merely being left further behind, but as a result of capitalist development. Ya, so ini adalah kapitalis sistem itulah yang membawa kepada poverty. That is what he is trying to say. Ya. So ini membawa, the reason being is the change of dependency that existed since colonial period. Latin America, dalam hal ini Latin America caught up in a global system of dependence consisting of relationships of exploitation. Yeah, so the peripheral regions will always be exploited and marginalized, and the flow of surplus. Yeah, so look at it like this. Yeah, the flow of surplus. So for him, ini adalah di luar, ini adalah what we call negara-negara di luar Eropah, negara-negara satellite outside here, yeah, negara-negara satellite, and this he said this is the center, yeah, metropolis center. So peripheral nations, apa yang berlaku? Raw materials, they move from here, come here, get into the industrial centers, and then they are imported back, come out through the what they call it, factory, the London, Birmingham, Liverpool, and so forth. Daripada sini keluar industrial goods ataupun manufactured goods dihantar ataupun dijual kembali kepada negara-negara di luar Eropah or the peripheral nations. Yeah. So for him, he said this sort of arrangement, this is the structure. This is why he calls structuralist models of development. Ini struktur ini, ya, adalah yang membawa kepada what they call perbezaan pembangunan di antara negara-negara di luar ataupun negara-negara at the margin dengan negara-negara di tengah, ya, di pusat, ya. So these two ini membawa kepada what he calls satu perhubungan dependency, ya, dependency. Negara-negara ini bergantung kepada negara-negara ini untuk mendapatkan industrial goods. Negara-negara di center ini bergantung kepada negara-negara peripheral nations untuk raw material, yeah. So these raw materials go through the factories in the cities in Europe and comes out, yeah. So our susu getah go here, keping getah go here, come out as apa? Kasut, roda kereta, and so on and so forth, yeah. So he said this is the main reason why poverty exists. So if this country wants to experience development, they need to sever, ya, memutuskan perhubungan dengan negara-negara ini. Ya. So how do you come up with that? He said through socialist revolution. You take control of the factory, take control of the means of production. Ya. The banking system lah, sistem negara, undang-undang, and so on and so forth. So that is what they call socialist revolution. Yeah. So that is what he said. So the flow of surplus, yeah, this is the flow of surplus. Yeah, the flow of surplus go like that and then come back like this. So this is the pembelian harga raw materials adalah lebih kurang daripada penjualan industrial goods and manufactured. So that is why he said so the flow of surplus and co-periphery principle. Yeah, the periphery regions will always be exploited and marginalized, manakala co-industrialized country experience growth and economic development through exploitations of non-industrialized peripheral countries. So ini membawa what he called the chains of dependency. So Latin America caught up in a global system of dependence consisting of relationships of exploitation. The peripheral regions will always be exploited. Yeah, so that's basically, I've explained that just now. So this is what he says. So low income economies, like that. Middle income economies, high income economies. So this is what called the center, yeah, the green ones. These are the center. These are the center. And the low income is these are the countries at the margin. We see later on kritikan terhadap pandangan ini by looking at adakah ini benar. If you look at what happened in Southeast Asia here, you see, we'll see later on. Yeah. So concept of dependency theory ini, concept of dependency applied to other parts of the world. Misalnya Walter Rodney's book How Europe Underdeveloped Africa 1972 suggests that intervention of European powers in African social, political and economic throughout 19th century created dependency situation and led to impoverishment of African peoples. Yeah, so that is the idea. The notion is colonialism telah membuat Afrika miskin in other parts of the world. Now, if you look at the critique towards this theory is, but if you look at Southeast Asia, for instance, negara-negara di Asia Tenggara, Singapura, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, or except for Thailand, Thailand was never tidak pernah dijajah, neither was Brunei. So the idea that penjajahan itu membawa kepada kemiskinan dan tidak boleh mengubah rupa bentuk sesebuah negara itu juga dipersoalkan. Kerana semua negara ini, Singapura, Malaysia, semua ini adalah negara di pinggir, yang kawasan pinggir, tetapi sekarang ini menjadi, misalnya Singapura for instance, it's one of the highest GDP in the world. Yeah, so these are some of the critiques that's coming out against dependency theories. Yeah. So dependency theories came from the global south, a change from dominance of northern voices in theories of development. Yeah. Walau bagaimanapun they have contributed so much for theories and scholars to look at countries outside Europe and America, to look at apakah their experiences with development. Yeah. Right, so these are some of the key points. Under development is a historical process, not a condition. Ya, adalah satu historical process, bukan satu keadaan that is necessarily intrinsic to poorer countries. The dominant and dependent countries together form a capitalist system. Ya, so negara kaya untuk mewujudkan satu sistem kapitalis, there must be a relationship between negara-negara yang kaya dengan negara-negara yang miskin, ataupun the dominant and dependent. Yeah, underdevelopment is an inherent consequence of the functioning of the world system, struktur dunia itu sendiri. Yeah. Now, apakah inadequacy of dependency theories? Apakah we've seen its merit? Now we look at some of its demerit. Right, so the inadequacy yang paling nyata adalah overlooked social and cultural variation within core and periphery. So the idea is seperti it's almost saying that semua negara-negara di Eropah adalah sama, tidak ada perbezaan. Seolah-olah tidak ada kemiskinan wujud di negara-negara Eropah ataupun di negara-negara yang kaya, ya, yang sudah membangun. Begitu juga dengan negara-negara di luar Eropah. So they give satu bayangan bahwa semua negara di luar Eropah adalah sama. The poverty and mempunyai kemiskinan, hidup dalam pembangunan yang mundur and so on so forth. Which is not true. Dia tidak melihat kepada social dan cultural variation. Apakah peranan agama, for instance? Apakah peranan nilai budaya, ya, dalam membentukkan sesebuah negara, pembangunan sesebuah masyarakat? So they say it's too static dan tidak melihat kepada dynamic. Ya. So the other question is socialist revolution. Is it a workable aim? Adakah itu sesuatu yang boleh dicapai? Now, if you look at what happens in just the election in America. A lot of people think that it is just a fight between Mr. Biden dengan President Trump. That is not so. The bigger picture is the Democratic Party, under Mr. Biden, they are moving towards what they call the socialist revolution, trying to initiate the socialist revolution in the US. But is that a workable aim? Yeah, is that a workable aim? Now we will see what happened in the next few weeks. Yeah, so dependency theory said, ya, negara-negara yang miskin, if you want to yang kurang membangun, if you want to membangun, you need to de-link yourself from negara-negara yang berada di dalam world capitalist system. Is it possible? Yeah, is it possible to de-link? About, how about sharing of knowledge and technology and so on and so forth? Yeah. Yeah, so these are some of the critiques of dependency theory. Narrow focus on exchange relationship as basis for domination. Yeah, doesn't look at local processes of exploitation and exclusion. Yeah, for instance, for them is eksploitasi dan exclusion itu hanya berlaku oleh kerana sistem struktur negara, struktur ekonomi dunia. Tapi dia tidak melihat kepada, let's say, the caste system. Ya, sistem kasta itu, sistem stratifikasi sosial yang wujud dalam sesuatu masyarakat itu juga adalah satu eksploitasi dan satu exclusion. Ya, and slavery, ya, itu adalah local, ada slavery, sistem slavery, perhambaan at local processes, ya, the local level. Itu juga merupakan satu eksploitasi dan exclusion. So it's not necessarily because of capitalist system, right? So frame model undermined by changing economic condition of some formerly poor countries, the Asian tigers. So model yang dia saran ini telah underminekan oleh experience ataupun pengalaman the Asian tigers like Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapura, Malaysia, Indonesia. Kerana semua negara-negara ini pada satu ketika adalah negara-negara yang dijajah. Tetapi sekarang their economic condition is very different. Yeah. So the other critics is oleh kerana it allow us to analyze, it allows us to see things, provide us a different vision about a situation. Tetapi dia polisi, implikasi polisi dia agak limited. Yeah? So agak limited. So it focus too much on economic factors and historical view, little consideration to social, cultural, and political context within which development takes place. Yeah? So dia tidak melihat kepada keadaan setempat. Yeah? Variasi yang wujud di antara satu negara dengan yang lain. Yeah? Apakah peranan budaya, apakah peranan politik at the local level. So he overlooked those things. Yeah? Right, so itu adalah dependency theory yang telah bermula dengan Raoul Prebisch, Paul Baran, dan Gunda Frank. Now the other theory that emerged, yeah, kesan daripada kritikan terhadap dependency theory adalah oleh world system theory yang disarankan oleh Immanuel Wallerstein in 1974. Dia mempunyai karakteristik yang hampir sama dengan dependency theory. Yeah. So both theory, world system theory dengan dependency theory is what we call the co-periphery models of development. Yeah, the co-periphery models of development. Yeah, the co-periphery model here. Yeah. Right. So Immanuel Wallerstein in 1974 proposed the world system theory which promoted the co-periphery concept. Yeah, sama dengan konsep yang disarankan oleh dependency theory. But unlike the term develop and developing, the co-periphery models does not imply that change will occur. Yeah? Co-periphery regionalism got its start during the period of colonialism, was reinforced by industrial revolution and continues in the age of globalization. Yeah. So for him, yes, industrial revolution dan juga sekarang ini the age of globalization meneruskan core periphery concept. Yeah. Why world system theory? East Asian growth. Tadi saya sudah katakan the Asian tigers yang telah what they call provide critiques towards dependency theory. Crisis of socialist states. Remember in 1989, the coming down of the Berlin Wall, the coming down of the Balkan states, the disintegration of USSR. So ini adalah membawa kepada crisis of socialist state, dan crisis with capitalism in US juga, ya, dengan adanya walaupun pembangunan yang rancak, tetapi kenapa kemiskinan masih wujud. So that was the thing that caused world system theory to emerge. Right, I think we have less than 1 minute. It's going to close. I'll give you about, let's say 5 minutes break dulu. Yeah, I need to get some water. Now, Wallerstein idea and world system theory, by the time the world hits 1980s, there were 3 blocks of 3 blocks on the global on the global stage. Huh? The first world, the 3 blocks are the first world. These are negara-negara. First world, the capitalist West, the most advanced nations, the most advanced nations, and democratic and capitalist. The second world are the communist East of the Soviet Union and its Eastern European satellites, Red China, North Korea, and Vietnam. The third world are basically the non-aligned nations with mixed economies, state control. Now, and sekarang ini, I mean, of course, people don't talk about the third world nowadays, but that is what the system was in 1980s. So, that was the three blocks at the global stage. Now, it is, if you can see, things were changing. Yeah. The Soviet Union has disintegrated. Banyak the Balkan states like Ukraine and all those things, they were coming out of the grip of socialism and chose to go for open market democratic system, and a lot of the third world countries also becoming part of the first world or become more advanced in terms of their economic system and political system. Right, so this is the reason why world system theory emerged. Yeah, so the East Asian growth, the crisis of socialist states, and also crisis with capitalism in the US. Yeah, right. So for Wallerstein, you believe that the periphery was being exploited by richer countries. He used the word was, and not continue. So between Wallerstein dan world system theory dengan dependency theory. Dependency theory itu lebih bersifat statik. Kalau sesebuah negara itu telah dijajah, dia akan menjadi negara miskin. Seolah-olah negara itu tidak boleh berubah. Ya, dia mesti dijajah seumur hidup negara tersebut. Nah, bagi Wallerstein, he said yes, there were exploitation, but that is something that is evolving. So that is why he used the word was being exploited by rich countries, the core countries. Now, the other difference is between core and periphery, there are semi-peripheral countries that import raw materials from the periphery and high-tech goods from the core and export semi-manufactured goods to the core and industrial products to the periphery. So for him, it's not just daripada mendapatkan raw material daripada periphery dibawa kepada core, and from the core you bring the industrial goods out to the periphery. So for Wallerstein, it's a bit more complicated. Ya, ada 3 bentuk negara yang di pusat, negara-negara di semi pinggiran, dan negara-negara pinggiran. Ya, and then negara they move in between these three. They are not static but dynamic. Ya, dia bergantung kepada if let's say if a country suddenly able to produce materials based on high-tech goods and then and sell it to other countries, meaning negara itu menjadi sebuah negara yang core. Ya, so negara core. Ya, but if a country, let's say Greece for instance, apa yang berlaku di Greece, they mismanage the economy. Ya, if they mismanage, and then negara itu akan berubah menjadi from a core economy to become periphery economy. So it's more dynamic for him. So the world system theory moved beyond static dualism to three groupings of countries: the core, semi-periphery, and periphery. Members are not fixed. They're able to move in and out of categories and not doomed to exploitation and marginalization forever, seperti yang disarankan oleh Gunda Frank. Misalnya new industrialized countries of Asia, yeah, Japan, Korea, South Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So consider this within global capitalist system to date from 15th and 16th century. So there is a fluidity of categories and the potential movement from one category to another. So it is a movement daripada satu kategori kepada satu kategori yang lain. Ini agak berbeza daripada the linear pathways of progress yang disarankan oleh Rousseau dan juga Karl Marx. Yeah? So it's for him it's a linear process like this. So you move, so it's not one straight line like this. Yeah. So you move from negara. What did Rousseau say? Primitive society, and then what do you call it? Then the second stage is precondition for take off, and then maturity, and then high mass consumption. Karl Marx stage dia primitive, so on and so forth, feudalism, capitalism, socialism, right? So it's a linear stages. But for world system theory, it is secular. So you just move in between these two. Hari ini Anda boleh menjadi sebuah negara itu boleh menjadi sebuah negara yang kaya, ya, so dia menjadi pusat. But esok jika keadaannya berubah, duitnya, harga duitnya turun and so on and so forth, it can move from here to here, the white bit here, right? So it's a movement. It is secular rather than a linear. Yeah? So dia lebih sifat dynamic. So these are for him the core. Apa characteristics the core? Apa characteristics semi-periphery? Apa characteristics? Yeah? Yang tidak. What doesn't move is the characteristics, but countries can move in between the tier. Yeah, so this is what we call the three-tier structure. The core, negara-negara the core. So ini adalah processes that incorporate higher levels of education, higher salaries, and more technology, generate more wealth in the world economy. Negara, and then the next stage. The semi-periphery, the semi-periphery here. Yeah. This semi-periphery, this is the core semi-periphery. What is the places, negara-negara where core and periphery processes are both occurring. Places that are exploited by the core, but then exploit periphery. Yeah. Serve as a buffer between core and periphery. Then the periphery pula here. Yeah. Process that incorporate lower levels of education, lower salaries and less technology, generate less wealth in the world economy. The question for you is, where do you think Malaysia is? Is it a core? Is it semi-periphery or periphery? Yeah. So you look at the situation here. Yang mana lebih fitting for Malaysia? This is Wallerstein system movement of goods under world system theory. Yeah? So here, from periphery, the periphery will bring the raw materials here, take the raw material to semi-periphery. At semi-periphery, dia manufacture the raw material menjadi semi-manufactured goods dan go into core. In the core, it manufacture it again to become high-tech goods dan dijual kepada semi-periphery. And then dari sini menjadi industrial end products balik kepada periphery. Yeah. So this is basically the system how the things work. So the raw materials sampai balik ke sini industrial end products. Right? Right. So if you look at Malaysia, where are we? Dari segi world trade, this is WTO. Malaysia is still where?
Very free.
Huh?
Very free.
Periphery, yeah. Malaysia is very at the periphery, yeah, compared to Indonesia. Yeah, compared to Indonesia. So Malaysia is here, Indonesia is already here. So co-periphery model is a new approach to develop or underdeveloped idea. Co-periphery also used in a political context. The core are the nations with a high level of prosperity with dominant economies globally. Periphery adalah poor nations that are dependent on the core as markets for raw materials and sources of technology. Semi-periphery are better off than periphery but still dominated by the core to some degree. Yeah. So basically this is the Wallerstein co-periphery model of development. Now, apakah kritik terhadap world system theory? The possibilities of testing the world system theory itu adalah sangat baik untuk kita membuat analisis apa yang berlaku at the global system. Tetapi untuk menjadikan dia sebagai satu polisi, ya, remember modernization theory, it has its own policy. Marxism idea has its own policy. But to come up with a policy untuk yang berkatakan ini adalah world system policy pembangunan world system berasaskan world system, it's very limited. Yeah, so it can be used to describe certain patterns in economic development, tetapi tidak boleh jika if you want to transform it into approach to development ataupun polisi pembangunan, ia agak kurang berkesan. It is criticized as too focused on state level action while excluding local level processes. Ya, peranan-peranan yang berlaku di peringkat tempatan tidak diberi perhatian. So conclusion, the key points, the variety of ways in which development is defined and studied. Yeah. So we've seen world system theory dengan not modernization theory, dependency theory. So the two of them give us an idea that variety of ways in which development is defined and studied. Not one theory replacing another, but overlapping accounts of how development should be promoted. Yeah. So remember your assignment 3 require you to look at this. Two theories to look at one development project or development situation. Yeah. So then you see bagaimanakah teori yang berbeza melihat pada satu keadaan yang sama, tapi accounts dia berbeza. Ya, mungkin ada overlapping accounts, tapi ada juga account yang agak berbeza. Dependency theory provides a provocative set of ideas that we need to think about critically. Yeah. So, but dependency theory, they both give us importance of global economic system and hierarchies within it. Ya, memberi kita pengertian tentang ekonomi dari segi sistem global, dari tahap global. Both approaches, kedua-dua pendekatan memberi penekanan kepada national economic development within global context rather than individual countries. Now, what it's saying here is if you want to understand national economic development of Malaysia, you need to understand Malaysia within the global context, within the regional context of ASEAN mula-mula, dan selepas itu at the global context. Yeah. The relative strength of state within global systems helps with levels of development. Yeah. So kekuatan sesebuah negara di dalam global system itu akan membantu setiap negara-negara dalam tahap pembangunan mereka. So both have a strong historical basis. Kedua-duanya memberi penekanan kepada sejarah. Now I want us to look at a case study here. Bagaimana jika kita menggunakan co-periphery model untuk melihat pembangunan sesebuah negara, bagaimana dia agak berbeza daripada apa jika kita menggunakan modernization theory. Ya, kita ada plan what we call modernization theory promote what we call plan economic development. Ya, Malaysia juga kita ada plan economic development. Rancangan Malaysia pertama, kedua, ketiga, keempat. Sekarang kita masuk ke rancangan Malaysia ke-12. Yeah. Right, so that is going on. Malaysia has very clear idea where Malaysia wants to be. That's why we have Vision 2020. Sekarang kita ada Vision 2030. Yeah. Right, so this is partly because of the results of deliberate government policy to promote rapid industrialization through growth of secondary manufacturing sector from simple transnational control raw material processing, example rubber, for export, to transnational driven electronics consumer goods manufacturing for export, guided and controlled by Malaysian government agencies and driven by negotiated joint ventures with Japanese TNCs, and so on and so forth. So that is basically Malaysia punya deliberate government policy in order to promote industrialization untuk membawa Malaysia kepada satu negara membangun. Yeah, so that is basically modernization theory telah membantu Malaysia. Ya, telah diguna pakai untuk inform our policy. Now, if we use co-periphery situation untuk melihat keadaan yang telah dirancangkan untuk Malaysia berdasarkan modernization theory, you see a completely different picture. This is basically satu bayangan for your assignment 3. It gives the same situation. If you look at, jika Anda menggunakan modernization theory untuk mengkajikan keadaan Malaysia hari ini, we'll be looking at our GDP. Malaysia perhaps will be what we call almost a developed countries. That is why sekarang ini susah bagi kita Malaysia untuk mendapatkan bantuan dari IMF, bantuan daripada World Bank. If you want to apply for grant from UNDP dan agency United Nations, it's not easy to get because they say Malaysia is already well developed, yeah, compared to places like India and other places. So Malaysia appears to be good. Yeah. Now, but if you use co-periphery situation untuk melihat, yeah, keadaan Malaysia, you will see the co-periphery situation will say, no, actually, yes, GDP meningkat, yes, ada bangunan tinggi di Malaysia, yes, ada highway and all those things in Malaysia, tetapi the situation also has led to divisions in Malaysia. Yeah? Ada unequal prosperity and internal social and economic development. If you look at new economic policy, yeah, is it fair for everyone? Did the new economic policy telah menyebabkan unequal prosperity? Macam mana dia pula dengan internal social economic division? Ya, adakah kita mempunyai vision yang sama untuk negara kita? Ya, or is there a fragmented vision of where Malaysia want to be? Yeah, so current policies do appear to simply extend and evolve the core zones. Yeah, dia lebih polisi. If you look at the belanjawan negara yang telah baru dibentangkan tidak berapa lama dulu, adakah how about people who are miskin? How about rural areas? Yeah? The core zones, ada yang mengatakan bahwa di polisi itu lebih memberi penekanan kepada the core zones. Yeah. So if you look at what are the core zones, you can look at the regional. Peninsula Malaysia dipanggil sebagai the core. The periphery adalah Sabah dan Sarawak.